Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. This time you've given us a really cool topic, a whole chapter on smell and taste. We're going to really get into how they work, how they're connected, and what happens when they, well, don't work.
It's amazing how much smell impacts our lives without us even realizing it.
Yeah, for sure.
The olfactory system, the one that deals with smell, it actually bypasses the thalamus. That's the part of the brain that filters sensorial information.
Hold on, so smell just gets to skip the line. What's so special about smell?
Well, it's like smell has this direct connection to important parts of the brain, things like memory, emotions, even just our instincts. But let's start at the beginning. It all starts with odorants, these tiny molecules that are just kind of floating around everywhere. And when they go up our noses, they attach to these things called olfactory receptors.
So it's like odorants are keys and receptors are locks, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. Each receptor is meant for a specific odorant. And get this, dogs have like 1 billion of these receptors, which is
Wow.
about the same number of neurons in the rest of their brain.
Really? No wonder they're such good sniffers. So once an odorant and receptor, they bind together, what happens next? Where does that signal go?
Well, that starts a whole chain reaction. The signal travels through nerve fibers up to the olfactory bulb that's right above the nasal cavity. And inside the bulb, there are these clusters of neurons called glomeruli. They're like sorting stations.
Sorting stations, huh? What are they sorting?
So each glomerulus gets input from receptors that are looking for specific types of odorants. Like imagine all the signals for coffee go to one glomerulus, rose to another, and so on. So that's how the brain organizes all the smells that are coming in.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just a mess of signals coming in. There's a way to categorize them. Then what? Where do those sort of signals go?
This is where it gets really interesting. Smell is different from other senses. The olfactory system has direct routes to different parts of the cortex, and that directly impacts how we think, feel, and react.
Hmm.
One pathway leads to the orbitofrontal cortex. That's the part responsible for us being aware of and naming smells.
So that's how I know I'm smelling cookies and not burnt toast. But you said there were other pathways, right?
Right. Another goes to the piriform cortex. That one handles more of the unconscious reactions to smell. It's like that gut feeling you get when a smell brings back a memory or an emotion before you even know what you're smelling.
Oh, so that's why some smells can immediately take us back to a specific time or place. It's like a shortcut to our memory bank.
Exactly. And then there's the pathway to the entorhinal cortex and the hippocampus. Those are important for memory formation. And this is why smells can be such strong memory triggers.
Wow. It's all making sense now. But what about taste? How does that fit into all of this?
Well, taste or gustation starts with those little bumps on your tongue, the papillae.
Right.
They have taste buds, which is where the taste receptor cells are.
I remember learning about the taste map in school, sweet at the tip, sour on the sides and all that. But I have a feeling that's not really the whole story, is it?
You're right to question that. While there might be some small differences in sensitivity across the tongue, most taste buds have receptors for multiple tastes.
So no matter where I put food on my tongue, I'm getting a mix of tastes.
Exactly. And those basic tastes are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, that savory, meaty taste.
Umami, that one took me a while to get into. I remember as a kid.
It's interesting how our tastes change, isn't it? What we might not have liked as kids can become our favorite foods as adults.
That is so true. I used to hate olives, but now I love them.
It shows how much our experiences shape how we see flavors. And speaking of flavor, that's where taste and smell really team up.
Wait, are you saying what we taste is actually a combo of signals from both the tongue and the nose?
Absolutely. When we eat, the molecules from food travel up the back of our throat to the nasal cavity, and that stimulates those olfactory receptors.
So our tongue gets the basic tastes, but it's the aroma that really gives us all those complex flavors we experience.
Precisely. And the orbitofrontal cortex that we talked about earlier that plays a key role in all of this, it combines those signals from taste and smell to create that one unified perception of flavor.
It's wild to think that something as simple as eating a strawberry involves all of this complex stuff going on in our senses and brain. But there's even more to it, isn't there? You mentioned that this taste and smell connection also affects how much we eat.
That's right. It's not just about knowing what we're tasting. This mix of taste and smell also affects what foods we like and even how full we feel.
Okay.
There's this thing called alliesthesia, which basically means changed taste. What happens is as we eat how we taste, things actually changes.
So like when you have one slice of cake and it's amazing, but then halfway through the second slice, it's not as good.
Exactly. Think about it. Our brains are wired to make us want different foods in our diet. It's a survival thing, to make sure we're getting all the nutrients we need. Alliesthesia is one way our bodies get us to eat a variety of foods.
Oh, so it's like our taste buds are telling us, okay, enough of that flavor, let's try something new. I never thought of it that way.
It's all part of this system that controls our eating habits. This change in how we taste things, plus signals from our stomach, all work together to make us feel full or satisfied.
It's crazy how much is going on behind the scenes of something we do every day. But we've talked a lot about how these senses work normally. What happens when they don't?
That's a great question. Imagine if you lost your sense of smell. That's called anosmia. Or if you can't taste things as well, that's called hypogeusia.
Okay.
These things can have a huge impact on people's lives.
I get how that would affect, someone's enjoyment of food. But are there any other effects?
Definitely. Not being able to smell can be dangerous. You might not smell things like smoke or spoiled food. And even on a deeper level, not being able to smell can really take away those strong memories and emotional connections we were talking about. It can be really isolating.
Wow, that's sad. What causes those conditions?
There are a bunch of reasons. Sometimes it's from birth. Other times it's acquired like after a head injury. Certain medications can cause it too. Even viral infections like COVID-19 we know that can mess with your sense of smell.
It makes you realize how important these senses are and how we just take them for granted.
You're right. Even just getting older can lead to changes in how well we taste things, especially bitterness, which is probably why kids don't like a lot of vegetables that adults are fine with.
So it's like their taste buds are just picking up on that bitterness way more strongly. That makes sense. Like it's protecting them from eating things that could be bad.
Exactly. And speaking of protection, we touched on how taste guides us towards nutritious foods and away from dangerous ones, like how we naturally prefer sweetness. That's because sugar is important for energy.
And I'm guessing our craving for salt is because it helps regulate fluids in the body.
Right. Sourness can tell us that food has gone bad, so we usually avoid things that are too sour. But bitterness is more tricky. Some bitter compounds are poisonous, but others are in foods that are actually good for us. So it's this balance between avoiding harm and learning to like some bitter flavors.
So our taste buds are always playing this game of risk versus reward. But it's not all about our biology, right? We also learn to like or dislike certain foods based on what happens to us.
Absolutely. Our brains are really adaptable, and our taste preferences are a great example of that. We learn to associate certain flavors with good or bad experiences. And those associations have a huge impact on what we choose to eat in the future, like coffee. Many people think it's bitter at first, but over time they develop a taste for it.
That's a great example. It's almost like our brains are making a library of flavors, always updating it based on what we experience. And that library shapes our whole relationship with food.
I like that analogy. And it's not just taste alone. Smell is a big part of this learning process, too. Remember how we were talking about the olfactory system and the amygdala, the part of the brain that deals with emotions?
Yeah.
Well, if you have a bad experience with a certain food, like food poisoning, the smell of that food can bring back that bad memory and make you avoid it next time.
Right.
It's a really strong way to protect ourselves.
This is all so incredibly complex. It really shows how connected our senses, our experiences, and our brains all are. It's crazy how all of these systems work together to shape how we experience the world.
It really shows how amazing and complex the human brain is. And the best part is we're still learning so much about these senses. New research is always coming out with new insights into how we smell, taste, and experience flavor.
It's like there's this whole world inside our noses and mouths just waiting to be discovered. But beyond all the science stuff, I'm curious about what we can actually do with this knowledge.
Well, for one thing, understanding how these senses work so deeply opens up all these possibilities for dealing with real-world problems. Like, researchers are looking into ways to use what we know about taste and smell to come up with treatments for eating disorders or even things like Alzheimer's.
So by understanding these basic things, we can maybe help people in really meaningful ways. That's pretty amazing.
There's also a lot of focus on using smells and flavors to help people feel better and encourage healthy habits. You've probably heard of aromatherapy and how certain smells can be calming or energizing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've definitely used lavender oil to try to relax. But it sounds like there's actual science behind it.
Yeah, there's more and more evidence showing that certain aromas can affect our mood, how well we think, and even what we eat.
So smell is way more than just enjoying a nice sense. It can really have a real impact on our health and how we act. I had no idea there was so much going on with something as basic as smell.
It's pretty fascinating, right? And the more we learn about these connections, the more we can use the power of these senses to live healthier and happier lives.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. I feel like I'm experiencing things in a whole new way, paying attention to all these little details and flavors and smells that I never really noticed before. It makes you appreciate everyday things so much more.
That's what's great about knowledge. It helps us be more aware and makes our experiences richer. And speaking of experiences, we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. We talked about how connected our senses are to memory and emotion. Is there a smell or taste that takes you back to a certain time or place?
Maybe it's freshly cut grass that reminds you of summer or your grandma's apple pie. Whatever it is, We'd love to hear about it. You can find us on social media or leave a comment on our website. And don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations into the world around us. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.